For 300 years, the worst thing you could see from these islands was a sail. It came from every direction. French raiders, English privateers, corsairs out of North Africa, ships full of men who came ashore in the dark to burn the village and carry the people off to be sold. Whole families disappeared and were never heard of again. So the islanders built watchtowers on every headland and forts over every bay. And they learned to run for the hills the moment a strange ship appeared. Those towers are still standing. The people who built them never left, never gave the islands up, and never got so much as a thank you from the world that did this to them. 300 years of that, and not one of these islands was ever abandoned. Behind those cliffs is something the raiders never got close to. So who actually lives out here, 1,000 miles from anywhere? About 240,000 people spread across 9 islands. And on some of them, the cattle outnumber the people. On the smallest, fewer than 500 share a single village. The first thing you notice is who's missing. Nearly every family here has people in America or Canada, a brother in Massachusetts, cousins in California, a grandfather who left on a boat and never came back. 4 times more people of Azorean blood live abroad than live here. The ones who stayed keep those empty houses standing, and the gardens cut year after year for families who may never come home. Every wall on these islands is built from black volcanic stone, because it's the only thing there ever was. In places, the steam comes straight up out of the ground between the houses, and nobody thinks twice about it. In one valley, families still bury sealed pots of meat and vegetables in that hot earth and dig their dinner back out 6 hours later, cooked by the volcano itself. Cheese comes off herds grazing in old crater floors. Limpets are pulled straight off the rocks and grilled in garlic butter. And up in the hills there's tea growing, the last plantation of its kind in Europe. But the meal that explains this place is the one nobody pays for. Every spring, village after village cooks huge pots of beef and bread soup and hands it out free to anyone who walks in. A tradition born when the eruptions and the hunger came, and sharing food was the only insurance anybody had. These islands spent 600 years being raided, buried and emptied, and never once agreed to give themselves up. That stubbornness is written all over the land, in places that shouldn't exist and do anyway. A waterfall dropping 300 feet into the back gardens of the last village in Europe. A crater a mile across with cattle standing in the middle of it. A village abandoned by everyone who owned it, then rebuilt out of its own ruins. Most of the world has never heard of any of them, until now. The Azores rise far out in the Atlantic, and Flores marks the western edge of the whole chain. Faial Grande sits on that coast as the westernmost village in Europe, wedged between cliffs and open sea. Rain runs off those cliffs behind the houses, dropping thin waterfalls straight into the village. Volcanic soil stays fertile here, so small plots of potatoes and greens keep families fed year-round. Streams carry fresh water down from the hills, enough for both drinking and irrigating crops. Fishing still matters too, and coastal catch and limpets end up on plates across the village. Storms hit often, so neighbours share tools and food and lean on each other to get through them. One stream drops off a cliff inland, feeding one of the Azores' most photographed falls. Cascata do Poço de Bacalhau plunges close to 300 feet into a clear pool below. Heavy rain can turn that thin drop into a wide curtain within hours. Constant mist keeps the surrounding rock wet, so moss and ferns grow straight out of the vertical stone. Locals swim in the pool at the base, cold water fed directly from the fall. It ranks among the most photographed sites on Flores, a favourite stop after a day of farm work. A stone village rebuilt from its own ruins sits just beyond the pool's edge. Aldeia da Quadra stands in local basalt and original walls, restored by families who once left. Families left decades ago, and every house standing today was rebuilt using those original walls. Homes still face outward toward the fields, with the ocean visible past the last row of roofs. Stone paths connect each house to the plots where crops and livestock once supported entire families. Guests can now sleep in these homes and eat food grown the same way it always was here. The land this village sits on was itself shaped by a collapsed volcano above it. Caldeirão and Lagoa do Caldeirão form a crater over a mile across, lagoons spread across its floor. Shallow water fills most of the crater, broken up by small cones locals connect to nearby islands. Hikers cross the lagoons and wet meadows inside, walking through what feels like a giant natural stadium. Cows graze those same pastures, often standing in the exact centre of the old volcanic floor. Fog rolls in fast and can blank out the entire crater within minutes. On a clear day though, the lagoon turns into a mirror, doubling the rim above it. The cows standing in that crater floor are part of a farming tradition older than anyone can trace. Corvo's cattle move across volcanic slopes, turning grass into milk and meat year-round. Wet, windy hills don't slow them down, and most graze outdoors for the entire year. Their hooves pack the soil, keeping pastures open instead of overgrown with scrub. calves trail behind adults along paths worn between the high fields and the stone barns. Milking and hay cutting both get scheduled around the herd's own daily rhythm. Cheese and butter come straight off these slopes, a direct link between the animals and the dinner table. On other islands, that same volcanic ground cooks the meal itself. Furnas is a small valley town, where heat rising straight from the earth still does the cooking. Steam vents sit right beside homes and fields, making warm ground a normal part of daily life here. Restaurants and families lower sealed pots into the volcanic soil, then leave them buried for hours. Underground steam slowly cooks the meat and vegetables inside without any flame or gas. That heat also warms mineral pools nearby, where residents soak and unwind after work. Fertile ground around town grows the produce that often ends up in those same buried pots. Visitors keep arriving to watch the steam, but neighbours here still share food and stay close regardless. One buried dish carries that whole tradition underground. Cozido das Furnas is a full meal sealed in pots and cooked by steam from below. Cooks stack meat, sausages, potatoes, cabbage and carrots into sealed pots in careful layers. Staff carry those pots out to the fumaroles and bury them in marked holes in the hot soil. Rising steam cooks everything slowly for hours, working like a slow cooker built into the ground itself. Families dig the pots back up later, opening a meal that never touched a stove. The meal often comes with a sweet grilled muffin the islands have claimed as their own. Bolo levedo is lightly sweet, grilled until the outside turns golden and the inside stays soft. People eat it warm with butter, cheese or local meats, turning a simple bread into a full meal. Every family guards its own recipe, so the taste shifts slightly from one home or cafe to the next. The ground that warmed the meal is still boiling once the plates are cleared. Caldeirões das Furnas is a geothermal field of boiling springs and steam vents beside the town. Pools bubble like pots on a stove, and fumaroles release hot vapour with a faint sulphur smell. Ground here can crack without warning, so people keep to marked paths and boardwalks. Minerals stain the rock yellow, orange and grey where the hot water rises. Mud pots pop just a few steps from the walkway, close enough that visitors feel the heat on their faces. This underground energy also feeds small baths and spas scattered around town. Living here means sharing daily space with heat most places only see in a kitchen. Not far from those vents, someone learned to turn the heat into a garden. Terra Nostra. Garden holds a large thermal pool, its water stained orange by iron. Warm water year-round means people swim here, even on cold, cloudy days. Paths wind between exotic plants and old trees, gathered from far outside the islands. Some of these trees have stood for centuries, forming shaded tunnels that feel like rooms outdoors. Families rest and picnic beside ponds kept up by gardeners who tend this place daily. Weekend swims and evening walks here are just part of ordinary life for people in Furnas. Leisure and lunch share the same volcanic heat just past the garden gate. Furnas Lake sits beside ground so hot that locals use its shore as an open-air kitchen. Sealed cozido pots go into that ground, where rising steam does the cooking. Locals track the hottest spots simply by watching, where steam rises near the shoreline. Calm water sits just feet from busy cooking pits, where people check lids and timing throughout the day. A weekend walk here often ends with digging up lunch instead of switching on a stove back home. Visitors gather to watch the pots come out of the soil before eating right there by the water. Paths line the shore, mixing quiet lake views with the daily routine of cooking underground. Facing that shoreline, a neo-Gothic chapel marks a different kind of tradition tied to this town. The chapel of Nossa Senhora das Vitórias stands right on the lakeshore, facing both water and volcanic ground. Its dark stone tower stands out clearly against the trees and rising steam nearby. A grieving husband built it in memory of his wife, making it both private tribute and public church. Inside, quiet light and Catholic symbols reflect how strong faith still runs through this valley. Lake walkers pass it constantly, mixing a chapel stop with a visit to the cooking pits. It remains one of the town's clearest landmarks, tying family memory to volcanic land. Streams from this valley feed a laurel forest at Ribeira dos Caldeirões Natural Park. Stone watermills have lined this narrow valley since the 16th century. Rain and volcanic springs keep the streams running all year, powering the mills for generations. Families depended on that flower supply, making the valley central to the region's daily life. Laurel trees and tree ferns crowd the slopes, fed by the same water that once turned the wheels. Moss and ferns grow thick in the damp shade, forming one of São Miguel's fullest pockets of native habitat. The mills fell silent in the 1980s and took nearly 20 years to restore before the park reopened in 2005. Families still walk these paths today, drawn by the waterfalls and dense laurel canopy. That canopy shelters a small but vivid singer. Orange and blue flash through the leaves as the Eurasian chaffinch works its way along the stream. Seeds and small insects along the water's edge keep it fed in this damp forest. Males claim an open branch and sing in clear rising notes loud enough to cut through the waterfall. That song marks out the healthiest patches of forest where food and shelter hold steady. Nests sit deep in the shrubs, tucked low enough to stay dry through the wettest weather. Cracked and dropped seeds from its meals end up sprouting new plants across the valley. Small mixed flocks trail behind it through the trees, adding colour wherever it lands. Lower in the underbrush waits a bird far louder than its size suggests, the Eurasian wren. Moss, roots and cracks near the stream hide this tiny bird from almost everyone who passes. Despite its size, it hunts insects with total confidence in gaps too tight for most predators to follow. A fast, loud song pours out of it, more suited to a bird 5 times its size. That voice carries over the waterfall noise, enough to hold a small territory in a crowded valley. Its nest gets woven into a mossy bank so tightly it looks like part of the rock. A far more violent force reshaped a different island in 1957. Capelinhos Volcano sits on Faial's western coast, where the island grew straight out of the sea. The eruption ran 13 months, burying farmland and homes under ash. Not one person died, though families lost everything. "15,000 islanders left for the United States after the eruption. A refugee law pushed through Congress by Senator John F. Kennedy made that mass departure possible. Scientists used the fresh crater to study how new islands form. One structure stood through it all. The Capelinhos lighthouse still carries ash marks on its walls, showing exactly how deep the debris reached. Ships once relied on its beam as the coastline reshaped itself in real time. It stood untouched while everything around it was buried and lost. Local families treat it as proof of what an entire generation lived through. Exhibits inside tell how farmland turned to ash and why so many families chose to leave. From the platform, visitors see the volcanic cone, the changed coastline, and the buried land all at once. What follows that wreckage is a town built around calmer waters. Praia da Vitória grew around one of the largest natural harbours in the Azores. Fishing boats, cargo ships and small yachts share one calm curve of water. Fertile plains behind the town support crops and pasture, linking the harbour to farming life. Grilled fish, seafood stews, and local pastries fill the waterfront cafes each evening. The town earned its name in 1829, when liberal forces won a battle in this bay and turned the tide of a civil war. That victory is marked every August with a 10-day festival of parades, bullfights and music. The hill above all of it once kept the whole town safe. Serra de Facho viewpoint looks straight down over the bay, the beach and the fields below. From the top, the entire harbour and its beaches spread out in a single view. Signal fires once burned here, warning residents of approaching pirates and enemy ships. Locals called those fires fachos, and the name stuck to the hill itself. Faith kept the town just as steady as those fires. The Church of Santa Cruz stands at the centre of Praia da Vitória as its main parish church. Its walls have been damaged and rebuilt more than once, yet it has never lost its role as a meeting place. Religious celebrations, street festivals, and community gatherings still circle around its doors each year. Not every landmark in the Azores was made by people. Pico Mountain rises as Portugal's highest peak. Old eruptions laid down thick lava fields that families later turned into farms, vineyards and stone villages. Vines and crops grow straight out of that black volcanic soil, the only ground these farmers ever had. Weather and water on the slopes still shape daily life and work on the island. Islanders see it as both danger and identity, a source of pride tied to survival. Licensed guides lead climbers to the summit, continuing a long tradition of respect for the volcano below. The climb ends at something few people ever stand inside. Pico forms the summit crater of Mount Pico, a volcanic bowl at Portugal's highest point. Looking over its rim reveals the exact rock that built the entire island below. On clear days, other Azorian islands appear in the distance, circling the peak like distant neighbours. Thin air and a faint smell of sulphur make the summit feel closer to another planet than to Portugal. Climbers often pause here just to catch their breath before heading back down. What descended from this volcano, people put to work. Farmers turned Pico's lava fields into vineyards, pressing vines into small plots between black stone walls. Those walls, called kuris, were built by hand to shield the vines from wind and sea salt. Pico wine once reached tables as far as the Russian imperial court, carried out by ship. A plant disease in the 1800s wiped out most of the vineyards, forcing hundreds of families to leave. The vineyards that survived earned UNESCO protection as one of the world's most distinctive wine regions. Stillness found a place here that farming never reached. Lagoa do Capitão sits in a volcanic meadow, a calm freshwater lake fed by rain and runoff. Wetlands around its shore shelter wildlife, while nearby fields support grazing cattle. People here share that water and grass with both farm animals and wild species every day. Life gets louder and rougher closer to the sea. Mosteiros sits between lava cliffs and the open Atlantic, its houses facing black rock and waves. The village takes its name from the Portuguese word for monasteries, after its islets resemble ruined walls. Families split their work between fishing rough water and tending cows on nearby pastures. Grilled fish and fresh cheese from local dairy farms fill most tables in the village. A natural pool on the coast stays warm year-round, heated by volcanic activity far below. Kids here learn the tide pools and fishing spots the way other kids learn a neighbourhood. Some of that volcanic work happened just out of reach. The Mosteiros islets rise just offshore, dark lava towers carved by centuries of Atlantic waves. narrow ledges on the rock hold nesting seabirds, turning bare stone into a crowded colony. Local fishers line up their boats against the islets to judge depth and find fish. These 4 islets appear on signs and postcards across the whole village. At low tide, exposed rock connects them just long enough for a short walk between. Distance here is not just geography, but a way of life. Vila do Corvo is the only town on Corvo Island, an entire municipality contained in one small village. Roughly 400 people live here, few enough that most residents know each other by name. Livestock farming keeps many households running, with cows and sheep grazing the slopes above. Fishing adds tuna, fish stew, and spiced local cheese eaten with cornbread to the table. Isolation shaped daily life so completely that the island did not get electricity until 1963. Neighbours still rely on each other, from fixing boats to sharing food when supplies run low. Before electricity, this island ran on something older. Corvo's windmills stand on open ridges, built to catch Atlantic wind and grind grain for the island. Their sails once produced flour for the entire population of Vila do Corvo. Each mill could turn its cap directly into the wind, keeping the grinding steady through any weather. For islanders, these mills recall a time when bread depended entirely on wind and skill. The island kept one edge completely raw, Faial do Ouvidor. Old basalt flows and landslides piled up this ground at the water's edge, hemmed in by tall cliffs. A small village fills that strip, with corn plots, grape rows, and cattle pens set close to the ocean. Families live between rock and water, working volcanic soil and using a tiny harbour for fishing. Plates mix both sauces, with grilled limpets, giant clams and garlicky local fish. With few roads in, neighbours share tools, harvests and repairs to keep the settlement running. Rain barely touches this shelf, while Poço da Ribeira do Ferreiro drowns under it. Green cliffs ring a still lagoon on Flores, striped with water from top to bottom. Thin streams drop from near vertical rock, dozens of them running at once. Constant rain keeps those falls going most of the year, turning the valley into a natural water store. The lagoon drains into a stream that feeds fields and small farms below. Paths run from pasture into forest, then open suddenly onto a flat, mirror-like pool. Calm water and thick plants give birds cover beside the narrow footpath. The grey heron uses that cover better than anything else here. It stands at the lagoon edge, tall and still against the waterfall cliff. Long legs and neck let it slide into shallow water quietly, barely moving the surface. Slow streams bring small fish close to shore, exactly where it waits. One fast jab of its bill pulls up fish, tadpoles, or insects from water that seemed empty. Patience works like a tool for this bird, holding it motionless for long stretches. Its feeding depends on clean, steady fresh water, so any change in flow or mud cuts its success. Silence ends a few steps away, where the common moorhen lives in the reeds. It bursts into view among the stalks, busy and noisy on the calm, fresh water. Long toes and a light body let it walk on floating plants, turning the surface into a path. Seeds, shoots and insects get grabbed on the move, feeding it as it weaves through the maze. Chicks stick close to the adults, learning safe routes and quick hiding spots in this valley. They vanish in seconds when alarmed, slipping into narrow tunnels that bigger hunters cannot enter. All that stirring of plants and water keeps the wetland fresh, stopping it from going stale. Nothing has disturbed this valley in centuries, unlike Vilafranca de Campo. An earthquake in 1522 buried this old island capital under debris, killing thousands. Survivors stayed anyway, working the same sea and fields their families always had. New streets rose on safer ground, still close to the harbour, because fishing and farming were their living. Now the place feels slow and calm, marked by a past of loss and starting over. Boats leave before dawn, farms feed families, and tourism helps carry the town. Bakeries here built a reputation on one pastry, and people travel to eat it. Quejadas da Vila are small cheese tarts, packing milk, eggs, sugar and butter into every bite. They started as a way to use leftover curd, and locals now push them on visitors like a food badge. Sweetness aside, the town's other prize sits offshore, inside a volcano. The islet of Vilafranca de Campo is a drowned crater, flooded into a round lagoon. A narrow channel links the ring to the ocean, so waves calm down before entering. Steep rock walls block most swell, turning rough water into a sheltered pool. The whole formation is a protected reserve, with visits strictly limited. Swimming used to be open to anyone, though access and bathing are tightly controlled now to let nature recover. Locals treat it as a summer prize, a short boat trip, and quick dip inside a volcano. Higher ground belongs to the Chapel of Our Lady of Peace, reached one step at a time. Roughly 100 zigzag tiled steps climb the hill to reach it. Legend says a Virgin Mary image was hidden here during pirate raids, turning the slope into a secret refuge. Tile panels on each landing tell that story, so the climb reads like a book, one stage at a time. From the top, one view takes in the islet, the bay, and the rebuilt town below. Locals come for faith, quiet, and that view, using the hill as a calm meeting place. Water makes its own climb on the north coast, dropping 130 feet at Salto da Farinha. The fall pours from basalt cliffs into a small pool. Its flow changes with rain, booming after storms and shrinking in dry spells. The name comes from old grain mills, when falling water helped grind cereals into flour for local bread. Farms and picnic spots now share the valley, using the same wet weather and fertile volcanic ground. Waves carved something odder into the shore further along the coast. The elephant trunk looks like the animal dipping its nose into the Atlantic. Lava formed the rock first, then swell cut the arch and trunk out of it. From the top, more sharp cliffs, arches and stacks run along this coast. Fishers and tour boats use the formation as a clear marker and a favourite photo stop. Erosion works small here, though Caldeirão do Faial shows what collapse can do. Nearly 2 kilometres wide, the crater sits at the island's centre like a giant open water tank. Rain collects in its bowl and soil, feeding forests, streams and nearby farms. Cooler, wetter air hangs over the rim, gently steering Faial's weather and growing seasons. People walk marked paths around the edge, while rules protect the fragile ground inside. Daily life depends on this quiet reservoir, so looking after it is as normal as caring for a village well. Nothing hunts those forests. By day, except the Milhafre. This common buzzard glides over the crater forest, riding warm air like a lift. It scans fields and trees at once, taking rabbits, rats, and small birds that step into the open. Carcasses feed it too, so less dead livestock rots near farms and roads. Across these islands, it holds the mid-sized bird of prey role with no rival. Pairs nest on cliffs or tall trees, raising chicks that soon follow crater rims and pasture lines. Flying calmly over villages and fields, it turns up overhead almost as often as harbour gulls. By cutting rodent numbers, it quietly shields local grain stores and crops. Farms below fed people once, until everyone walked out of Sanguinho. Stone houses and steep paths above Faial de Terra show how families lived on wet, narrow terraces. Some of those homes are repaired now, turning a ghost village into a place for walks and simple stays. Life here means moving on foot, sharing work, and relying on what the hills and rain can grow. Solid rock lasts longer than any village, as the sea stacks of Rocha dos Frades prove. They rise straight out of the Atlantic off Flores, packed tight together. Lava formed the cliffs, then swell stripped away softer rock, leaving hard pillars just offshore. Waves bend around them, breaking swell and sending foam curling around their bases. Fishers line up their boats with the pillars when the sea turns rough. Seabirds claim the ledges, nesting and resting on bare rock above feeding waters. Life on Flores fits around cliffs, stacks, and fast-changing Atlantic weather. Weather feeds gentler ground on São Miguel, and Nordeste got the greenest share. This is one of the wettest farming areas on the whole island. Volcanic soil and constant rain feed forests and fields, so cows graze fresh grass almost all year. Family farms still raise cattle and cut wood, keeping dairy and meat at the centre of daily life. Villages sit on ridges above river valleys, close to fields, animals, and forest paths. Local kitchens use that grass-fed meat in hearty dishes, like gallo capão do Nordeste, rooster slow-cooked in wine. Farm families gather at the Church of São Jorge whenever work stops. It stands at the town centre, the main parish church for this municipality. Inside St. George fighting a dragon suits a place used to storms, steep fields and hard work. Feast days fill the square with families, food stalls, and processions, turning worship into a village event. Higher up, protection matters more than people, and Lagoa do Fogo proves it. It ranks among São Miguel's youngest and cleanest lakes. Steep slopes and native plants ring the water, with almost no buildings anywhere near it. The lake works like a huge freshwater tank, helping supply nearby towns and farms. Rules limit swimming, roads, and new construction, keeping water and wildlife safe. Even paths and viewpoints are controlled, so visitors do not damage banks or plants. People here chose protection over building around every shore. Clean streams run off these slopes, and the grey wagtail hunts every one of them. Yellow flashes under the tail as these birds run along the water. They stick to fast, shallow flows, picking insects off wet stones and grabbing flies from the air. That wagging tail works like a balance bar, steadying the bird on slippery rocks while it hunts. Nests go in close to the bank, with eggs hidden in cracks, roots and low soil. Chicks grow up in spray and noise, learning to chase insects over pools that feed the lake. If the water turns dirty or insects drop off, these birds disappear quickly. Their steady presence proves protection. Here still works. Grass matters more than water on São Jorge, and Velas built its living on it. The main town of the island works as a harbour and trading centre among cliffs and fields. Boats land fish in the port, while nearby family farms send fresh milk to cheese plants. People split their days between sea and cattle, sharing work like one close village. Volcanic grass stays green most of the year, so cows graze outside and keep milk constant. Many farms stay in the same families, with kids learning milking and cheese work from parents. Daily hours often follow the herd, set by milking, feeding, and deliveries. Months in a cellar turn that milk into São Jorge cheese. Raw cow's milk goes into each wheel, aging until it turns firm and peppery. Humid air moves it from mild and buttery to tangy and sharp, like a slow spice engine. Only wheels made on this island and passing expert tasting tests can carry the special PDO seal. Blackstone raised the town's other landmark, Igreja Matriz de São Jorge. Volcanic basalt gives it a dark face at the centre of Velas. Families come here for baptisms, weddings, funerals, and village celebrations. Those walls tied daily prayer to the volcano that built the fields and cliffs. Feast days turn the square into food stalls and music, with the steps as the meeting spot. Wine comes out of that same black rock in Madalena. Pico's main town sits under the big mountain, edged by vineyards behind lava walls. Verdelho vines root in rock cracks, those barriers blocking salty wind so grapes can grow beside the ocean. Families still work the rows by hand, carrying tools and baskets over uneven ground. The local white wines taste mineral and slightly salty, like stone and sea in one sip. People drink them with fish soup, octopus in wine, and grilled seafood from nearby waters. Festivals fill the streets with food stalls, music, and plenty of glasses raised to volcano wine. Quarried lava built more than field walls, including the Church of St. Mary Magdalene. Dark basalt fronts the town's main parish church. Builders pulled that rock from the ground, running through Pico's vineyards and streets. Families come here for baptisms, weddings, funerals, and feast day gatherings. Rivers do the work lava cannot, and Ribeira Grande grew strong on them. This northern farm town keeps its fields green with river water and volcanic soil. Local dairies turn nearby milk into butter, cheese, yoghurt, and fresh queijo. Tea hills feed old factories. So many families drink leaves grown just outside town. Basalt houses, churches, and food shops sit close together, selling bread, dairy, and sweets. Cavalhadas de San Pedro brings riders on horseback, with music and church bells for St. Peter. Children learn the parade route and songs early, because the festival is part of family life. Steep forest above the fields opens onto Miraduro do Sintrão. It sits on Mount Miranda, reached by a hard climb through thick trees. Those cliffs formed from an old pyroclastic eruption, ash and gas frozen into rock. Green pastures run right to the edge, then drop straight into crashing waves. On clear days, the coast spreads out like one huge green and blue map. Salt wind hits hard up here, so plants grow low and tough to survive. Sheltered slopes suit a crop nobody expects in Europe, and Guiana has grown it since 1883. This is Europe's oldest working tea plantation, still growing leaves on one green island. Water alone powers its old machines, no fuel needed after more than a century. Fields stay organic, with ocean air and volcanic soil, keeping pests away naturally. Pickers still gather leaves by hand, much like generations before them. Green and black tea come from one bush, split only by how long they oxidise. The plantation once closed, then reopened, refusing to let island tea disappear. Cups of it now reach drinkers worldwide, all from one small volcanic slope. Underground heat powers a bigger operation, the Ribeira Grande Geothermal Power Plant. It taps the volcano below, turning steam into power for the island. Pipes drilled far down pull up vapour hotter than boiling water, spinning turbines instead of burning oil. Much of São Miguel's electricity now comes from the fire that built its mountains. Forests grow right to the fence line, heat and greenery sharing one patch of ground. Plants like this cut the need to ship in fuel from far away. Locals see it as proof the volcano gives power, not just shakes the ground. Energy came harder in Lajes de Pico, hunted by hand from open boats. The town once ranked among the top whaling ports, sending small crews after sperm whales. Whalers could spot a blow far off, long before boats had engines. When the hunts ended, many of those men became whale-watching guides instead. Skills once used to kill whales now help protect them, tracking currents and reading spouts. Local tables still favour fish broth called caldo de peixe, along with slow-cooked beef in wine. Bread mattered as much as whale oil, and Moinho das Lajes ground the flour. The windmill stands on the coast, built where wind worked better than water for grinding grain. Pico had little running water, so islanders used gusts instead, turning air into flour. It ground corn for whaling families, feeding the same people who chased whales at sea. Its sales turned often, since nobody here could buy bread anywhere else. One small mill fed whole villages long before any stores stood on this coast. Before every hunt, crews prayed inside the church of the Holy Trinity. Twin towers rise over the old whaling square at the centre of town. Three tall naves fill the inside with light, under wooden ceilings and pointed arches from the 1800s. Whaling families once packed those pews before dangerous voyages. Terceira opens a stranger door, letting people walk down into Algar do Carvão. Visitors drop into a dormant magma chamber, one of the few on Earth open like this. A stone chimney leads down through hardened lava, formed thousands of years ago after the last eruption. Inside, the walls show how molten rock cooled and cracked into strange glassy shapes. Rainwater collects at the bottom, forming a small lake inside what was once a fire pit. Scientists study the cave to understand how the whole archipelago rose from the seafloor. Walking down feels like reading the island's birth story, told in stone. The site teaches visitors how volcanic force still drives daily life across these islands. Another crater holds a village, 2 lakes, and a love story, at Sete Cidades. A small parish lives inside this giant caldera, alongside water it has known for centuries. Volcanic soil feeds cattle and farms right within the crater walls. Legend says a green-eyed princess and a blue-eyed shepherd fell in love in secret. Her father forbade the match, and their parting tears filled the bowl, one lake blue, one green. Science blames depth and algae for those colours, though locals still prefer the tale of love and tears. Farmers nearby also grow pineapples slowly, using an old island method in warm glass houses. Down at the bottom, Lagoa Azul and Lagoa Verde look nothing alike. Both share one crater, yet sit side by side like separate bodies of water. One glows dark blue, the other bright green, though identical rain and rock feed them. Depth and tiny algae bend a light differently in each, creating those colours. Tears from a princess supposedly made the blue one, tears from a shepherd the green. A narrow bridge is the only thing keeping the two apart. Mist often rolls over the rim, making both vanish and reappear within minutes. Locals still choose the old love story over the scientific one. Up the path from that water, the church of São Nicolau holds the village together. It stands at the end of a tree-lined approach, towers rising above the crater village. Builders raised it in the 1800s, giving this small parish a church larger than its population needs. Locals still gather for Mass, keeping faith tied to daily farm and lake life. Tall cedars frame the doors like a green hallway. Money built something grander on the rim and then walked away from the Monte Palace Hotel. It has sat empty for decades, staring over the twin lakes below. Opened in the late 1980s as a luxury resort, the place shut after barely any time running. Rooms once meant for guests stand open to wind and rain, walls covered in moss and graffiti. Its grand hall, barely used, floods with water and plants growing through the tiles. Money troubles closed it fast, and no owner since has managed to bring it back. The ruin now draws more visitors than the resort ever did. People climb through broken windows just for the lake view guests once paid for. Flores keeps its own pair of craters, Lagoa Negra and Lagoa Comprida. Both sit on the island's high plateau, one dark, one long and thin. The black one looks bottomless, though its colour comes from peat alone. Beside it, the other stretch is narrow, cut by the same old eruption. Thick peat bogs ring them, soaking up rain, making this some of the wettest ground in the archipelago. Migratory birds arrive each year, resting on some of the cleanest water around. One eruption made them both, yet they look nothing alike. Heavy rain keeps them full year round, even when the island turns dry. Rain feeds bogs here, while charity feeds whole streets in Angra do Heroísmo. The city once served as a key port for ships crossing the Atlantic. Its centre still follows a Renaissance street plan, laid out before cars existed. Small chapels called imperios line those streets, built to feed the neighbourhood once a year. At the Holy Spirit festivals, families cook a beef and cabbage soup called Sopas do Espírito Santo, then handed out for free. Alongside it comes alcatra, beef slow cooked in a clay pot, the true king of the island's kitchen. For weeks after Easter, strangers eat side by side outdoors, and no one pays. This tradition has run for centuries, tying neighbours closer than almost anywhere else. A visiting queen got her own recipe here, the Dona Amelia cakes. Local women baked this spiced cake for her in 1901, and it never disappeared. Molasses, cinnamon, and raisins give it a dark, heavy taste, closer to gingerbread than any other island bake. She sailed into a harbour guarded by an old volcano, Monte Brasil. The cone rises just outside the city, the largest of its kind on the Azorean coast. It formed underwater, erupting up from the ocean floor until ash piled high enough to make solid land. That growth carved out a sheltered bay, the exact spot where Angra de Heroísmo later grew. Inside its crater sits Fortress São João Baptista, one of Portugal's largest forts, built to guard the port. Cannons once lined its slopes, turning the whole hill into a natural wall against attack. A mountain born of fire became the city's best defence from the sea. Fire and earth attacked the city too, hitting the Sé Cathedral twice. It became the seat of the Azores diocese back in the 1500s, the first of its kind in the islands. A local legend tells of a terrified choir boy who leapt from its tower, only to be caught by wind and set gently on a nearby rooftop. In 1980, an earthquake cracked both towers, and they fell 2 years later. Repairs were still underway when flames broke out inside in the mid-1980s. Rebuilt after both blows, it stands again today, still holding one of the largest pipe organs in the Azores. Down at the water, sailors said their last prayers in the Igreja da Misericordia. Builders raised it in the 1700s, over an older chapel from the 1400s. That earlier chapel was attached to the city's first hospital, treating sick men off Atlantic ships. When Vasco da Gama's fleet limped home from India, his own brother died there of scurvy. Crews stopped in before every voyage, their last stop on solid ground. Faial gives sailors paint instead of prayers, and Horta holds the results. The town holds one of the world's largest painting collections, left by sailors, not artists. A local superstition says any boat that skips a mural risks a shipwreck later. Crews paint their vessel's name, flag, and route on the walls, a lucky stamp before sailing. Over 1,000 boats dock here yearly, and nearly all leave artwork behind. Sailors still treat one bar in town, open since 1918, like an unofficial post office. Local kitchens serve a sailor's favourite called linguiça com inhames, spiced sausage with boiled yams. Every painted wall belongs to Horta Marina. Roughly 300 boats fit inside, one of the world's most visited ocean marinas. Since 1986, crews have covered its concrete with paintings, turning the docks into a living gallery. Legend says anyone who skips the ritual risks bad luck on their next voyage. Sailors add their vessel's name and flag to the wall, a charm before heading out. This small harbour hosts the country's biggest nautical festival, each August, drawing crews worldwide. Sailors get one last view of the bay from Monte de Guia. It began as an eruption rising from the ocean floor, later fusing onto Faial. Its crater holds two rings, carved by separate blasts in one spot. A tiny chapel sits on top, built for the patron saint of fishermen, watching over the harbour below. From up here, the town, the ocean, and Pico Mountain all line up in a single view. The whole peninsula is protected land now, home to rare birds and plants. Across that water, São Roque de Pico still builds boats by hand. Wooden hulls take shape here, using a skill inherited from whalers. Shipwrights work from memory alone, no blueprints needed. A museum preserves old whaling craft, once launched from shore to chase sperm whales. This town turned a violent trade into work worth saving. Families still farm the surrounding volcanic soil, growing grapes for wine and sweet potatoes. Its harbour once linked Pico to neighbouring islands before roads or ferries existed. No harbour serves Fajar da Caldeira de Santo Cristo at all. Roads never reached it either, so people arrive on foot or by quad bike. Its lagoon holds the only wild clams found anywhere in Europe, caught by just 2 licensed fishermen. Families farm the volcanic soil their grandparents worked, close to the cliffs and sea. In 1890, over 100 people lived here with their own school, though only a handful remain today. Without shops nearby, neighbours rely on each other for farming, fishing, and daily needs. Volcanic heat makes life easier at Caldeira Vella, where the water arrives warm. Sitting on a volcano's slope, Its pools stay between 75 and 102 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. The water runs rust-coloured from iron, seeping straight out of the rock below. One rule matters: keep your eyes shut underwater, since the minerals sting. Nearby, a separate spring boils between 140 and 212 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to cook an egg. Only 100 visitors are allowed at once, each capped at 90 minutes to protect the site. Colour disappears entirely at Santa Cruz de Graciosa, where every wall is painted white. It serves as the capital of the White Island, running everything from one small town. Only about 1,800 people live here, a population smaller than most mainland villages. Houses stay strictly white, a rule that gave the island its nickname. Vineyards outside town grow in volcanic soil, alongside a cheese with protected status found nowhere else. Farmers still dry corn on wooden racks, a method passed down for generations. At festival time, everyone crowds into the Praça de Touros da Graciosa. Touradas à corda run here, a bullfight where nobody dies, the animals staying tied to a rope throughout. Ten men called pastores hold that rope, steering the bull and keeping it from breaking free. Its horns get capped, cutting the risk for anyone brave enough to run close. Crews out of Capelas chased animals nobody could rope. Sent sperm whales were the biggest catch of the whaling factory here. Whalers used only a lance and strength, dragging each animal to a cooperative that fed the village. That old factory is a museum now, open Tuesday to Sunday, holding tools once used for the hunt. The sea still feeds the table, with fresh fish served daily at the local harbour cafe. Faial da Terra never needed the ocean, since its water falls from the hills. Locals call it the island's nativity scene, for how its white houses tuck against the hills. Fewer than 400 people live here, small enough that the whole village farms and fishes together. A waterfall called Salto do Prego drops nearby, feeding a pool where people still swim and cool off. Farmers work old volcanic soil on slopes too steep for machines, using hand tools instead. The sea still shapes local meals, with fresh catch landing on tables the same day. Cliffs press in much harder around Faial dos Cubra. A cliff collapse created it, the flat land underneath built entirely from landslide debris. It sits between two lagoons, a wetland rare enough to be protected under an international treaty. In 2017, judges named it one of Portugal's 7 wonders in the sea village category. Farmers grow corn, grapes and potatoes on soil residents call unusually good. That corn becomes cornbread, once eaten more often than wheat bread on this island. Fishermen come here just for shrimp, used as bait to catch grouper offshore. Off Santa Maria, rock rises straight out of the water at São Lourenço Islet. It marks the edge of a bay shaped by an old volcanic crater, curved like an amphitheatre. Vineyards ring that bay, growing grapes on terraces cut into the hillside. The water spans 279 acres and holds one of the island's best natural pools, sunk far enough down for diving. Portuguese settlers picked this island first, building Vila do Porto in 1439. The town received the first charter in the whole archipelago. Its lighthouse dates to 1470, the oldest in the islands. Columbus stopped in this port in 1493, sailing home from America. Farmers grew wheat, grapevines and sugarcane, feeding early trade between the islands. The Holy Spirit festivities trace back to those first settlers, kept alive for centuries. That farming life still shows on the plate, with caçueira, slow-cooked pork, served across town. Settlement reached the far end of the archipelago at Santa Cruz das Flores. No town in Europe sits farther west, putting it closer to Canada than Portugal. Barely 2,000 people live there, yet they run the whole island from this one place. Flores rests on the American tectonic plate, not the European one, a rare twist for a European town. Cattle farming feeds most families, with milk and meat driving the local economy. The island holds more unique species per square mile than almost anywhere in the Azores, second only to Corvo. Back east, swimmers at Ponta da Ferraria bathe in ocean heated from below. Few places on Earth let anyone do that. It formed from a pseudo-crater, a rare feature where lava met the sea and exploded into steam. Water temperature swings between 64 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the tide. low tide brings the warmest soak, while high tide floods the cove with cold Atlantic waves. Those incoming waves can hit hard, tossing bathers around like a washing machine. Ropes and ladders line the pool, needed just to stay steady against the surf. Lifeguards only patrol in summer, so most of the year, people face the volcanic tide alone. Warm air does stranger work on São Jorge, growing coffee at Faial dos Vinhos. Europe has no other coffee plantation anywhere. Beans arrived 2 centuries ago, brought by an emigrant returning from Brazil. One family tends around 400 plants, growing right behind their own cafe. Just 70 people live in the village, farming a mild climate that lets the crop survive far outside its usual zone. Locals also weave cultures, hand-stitched quilts made on foot pedal looms, a craft unique to this Faial. Visitors drink that coffee alongside quejadas, sweet local pastries baked fresh nearby. Wool and linen carry an even older skill, kept alive through traditional weaving. São Jorge is known as the Weaving Island, famous for one signature quilt, the Colcha de Ponto Alto. Weavers dye their yarn with plants pulled from the hillside, a method used long before synthetic colours. The museum's oldest culture is around 100 years old, still holding its plant-based tint. Those quilts travelled overseas with island emigrants, carrying a piece of home to every continent. Foot pedal looms are still in use, the same tools their grandmothers once worked. A local cooperative keeps the trade alive, letting visitors watch weavers work in person. One quilt can take months to finish, since every pattern gets sewn by hand, never printed. Falling water drove the machines in mire instead of feet. The village sits on São Miguel's northeastern coast, built around waterfalls and old stone watermills. Those mills once ground corn, powered only by streams running down from the hills. Families still farm the volcanic soil, growing crops the way generations before them did. Fishing boats head out each morning, bringing catch straight back to local tables. It stays quiet by choice, running on farming and fishing instead of tourism. Uphill from the mills, the char fields grow something almost no European village can. Char Goreana grows here, Europe's oldest working plantation, running since 1883. This is one of only 2 spots left on the continent, producing tea at commercial scale, both on this coast. Volcanic soil gives the leaves a faint mineral edge, a taste found nowhere else in Europe. No pesticides get used, since Atlantic wind and rain keep pests away on their own. Workers still pick by hand, the same way it has been done for over a century. Flat farmland on Terceira makes a pattern best seen from Serra do Cume. The ridge rises above the island's eastern interior, one of the top viewpoints in the Azores. From up top, green fields form hundreds of squares, boxed in by black volcanic walls. Farmers cut that stone from lava rock, turning eruption debris into lasting fences. The grid keeps dairy cattle penned and pastures managed, built up over generations. Cows graze in nearly every square, since this land has fed Terceira's herds for decades. Hydrangeas bloom along the walls each summer, adding blue to the green pattern. Fields run right to the Atlantic, one view of centuries of farming. Where that ocean meets the cliffs, Ribeira lives entirely off it. The village clings to rock right above the water, its name meaning warm river. Underwater hot springs heat the bay, so the beach here stays warm even in winter. Around 767 people live in this parish, most tied to fishing or farming. Local crews go after tuna and swordfish, catches that once fed families through the cold months. Each July, the Chicharo Festival runs, going since 1988, built around one small fish shared by thousands. That warm river gets its water from the Cascata da Ribeira Quente. It drops through thick greenery above the houses, feeding streams that shaped life below. Heavy rain never really stops in this valley, keeping everything green all year. That water has done more than look pretty, watering crops and filling wells for generations. Volcanic rock underneath acts like a sponge, storing rain and releasing it slowly. Ferns and moss cover every rock face, growing well in the damp air. Streams from here run down to the coast, linking the falls to the village water supply. Inland, almost nobody has ever found Lagoa Pau Pique. The lake hides in São Miguel's volcanic highlands. Tucked away from the crowds, it covers less than half an acre, small enough to feel like a pond. Its round shape gives it away, water filling a vent that once shot lava straight up. Visitors head to Lagoa do Fogo instead, further along the same volcanic massif. That bigger lake sits in a caldera dormant since 1563, yet this one stays overlooked. Cattle graze right up to the shore, since these highlands double as farm pasture. Native plants ring the water untouched, growing wild with little human interference. Cattle work harder at São Jorge's eastern tip, where Topo still farms with oxen. The village was the island's first settlement, holding town status from 1510 to 1867. Only around 508 people lived there, on land built from an old volcano's scoria cones. Yoked animals still pull the plough, a practice most of the island dropped decades ago. They also haul manure to the fields, prepping soil the way their grandparents did. Corn grown here serves two jobs: feeding cattle green and getting ground into flour once dried. The soil runs well here, since this corner formed right on one of São Jorge's eruption sites. Dairy herds graze nearly every field, tying families to the same animals for generations. Waterfalls hem in the fields around Farrazinha instead of cliffs alone. It sits below towering rock, one of the most scenic spots on Flores. Just 71 people live there, on ground settled since the 1400s. One of the island's tallest falls drops off the cliff right beside the village. Over 200 waterfalls run across Flores in total, earning it the nickname Island of Waterfalls. Constant runoff built the flatland below, made from lava and washed down sediment. Farmers still work that soil today, growing yams and greens on ground made by water and rock. Clouds deliver the water higher up, feeding the forest on Serra de Santa Barbara. The peak rises 3,350 feet, a dormant volcano and Terceira's highest point. A double caldera crowns its summit, formed by two collapses, the oldest dating back 25,000 years. Mist clings to the top constantly, feeding what is known as the cloud forest, one of the rarest habitats in the Azores. Endemic cedar trees found nowhere else on Earth still grow wild among them. All that moisture feeds a watershed, supplying the west side of the island. One song fills those branches, sung by the Eurasian blackcap. This small warbler slips between branches, males marked by a black cap, females by rust brown. Azores birds stay year-round, while mainland cousins fly thousands of miles to Africa each winter. Somewhere along the way, this group skipped migration and settled here for good. Its call carries through the trees, a warble ending in a sharp note. Berries and insects make up its diet, and each berry carries seeds through its gut. Those seeds land wherever it flies next, spreading plants across the forest. Down at sea level, boats have left São Mateus da Caleta before dawn for generations. The parish grew from a small bay, its name simply meaning small inlet. Nearly 3,800 people live here, the largest fishing community on Terceira. Two forts once guarded this harbour, built in the 1500s against pirate raids. Crews return with tuna, grouper, octopus and limpets caught by old methods. That catch fills the pot for caldeirada, a layered fish stew, simmered slow. Everything in the village runs through one fishing pier. It sits right where fishermen's houses crowd the shoreline, the working centre of the village. Boats push off in darkness, heading out while the rest of the parish still sleeps. They come back loaded, unloading straight onto the concrete. That daily haul drives the local economy, from market stalls to nearby restaurants. Fishermen gather here every day, since the dock works as a meeting spot as much as a landing. One storm in 1893 took the village church down completely. A hurricane flattened the old coastal building, so locals raised the Igreja de São Mateus da Caleta from scratch. They laid the first stone in 1895, recovering within 2 years of losing everything. What went up became one of the largest rural churches in the Azores. The original still stands too, roofless and abandoned right where the wind left it. Storms wrecked ships as easily as churches, until Farol do Arnel lit up. The beam first shone in 1876, from the oldest lighthouse still standing in the Azores. Perched above towering cliffs, it guards some of São Miguel's toughest waters. Ships have relied on that light for nearly 150 years, crossing seas that swallowed vessels before it went up. A small fishing settlement grew below, families building lives around this coastline for generations. Reaching it still means a steep climb down, since cliffs cut it off from the rest of the island. Keepers once lived on site, tending the lamp before automation took over. Fishermen from that settlement still work these waters, keeping old traditions alive. Down the same coast, Agua de Pau farms in the shadow of a live volcano. The village ranks among São Miguel's oldest settlements. Sandwiched between ocean and mountain, farmers here have worked one patch of soil for generations. That peak behind them stays active, one of several still building the island from below. Fishing crews work the coast steps away from the fields, splitting village life between land and sea. Volcanic ground grows crops most places struggle with, ash and lava turned into fertile earth. Above the houses, the church of Nossa Senhora do Monte watches both. A small chapel built in 1931 crowns the slope. Dedicated to Nossa Senhora do Monte Santo. From up there, the southern coast spreads out below. Ocean on one side, mountain on the other. Pilgrims still make the climb during religious festivals, a tradition passed down for generations. That devotion shapes daily life below, as Catholic feast days still set the village calendar. Fishing built Ponta Delgada too, before trade turned it into a capital. It is the biggest city in the island chain, and the regional seat too. Centuries of Atlantic crossings turned that fishing settlement into an economic centre. Its harbour stretches almost a mile out, once a stop for ships between Europe and America. Volcanic soil here grows oranges, pineapples and tea, among Europe's only tea farms. Many families still farm and fish like their grandparents did, even with tourists filling the streets. At the Mercado de Graça, locals still buy fresh cheese and produce off the farm truck. Whaling once drove this port, but it stopped decades ago, and whale watching took its place. Every spring, Senhor Santo Cristo dos Milagres empties those same streets into one procession. Nothing else in the archipelago draws crowds on this scale. At its centre sits a small wooden statue of Christ carved centuries ago. Once a year, thousands carry that figure, over flower carpets made fresh overnight. Pilgrims fly home from across the world just for this week, keeping promises made generations ago. Santa Maria met a different kind of crowd with cannons from the Forte de Sobras. Builders raised it to fight off pirates, guarding the harbour since the 1500s. It is the oldest fully walled fort still standing in Portugal's old overseas territories. Its four corner walls point outward like arrowheads, so gunners could cover every angle of attack. In both World Wars, soldiers mounted machine guns inside those same defences. Uniforms and artillery fill it now, as the Military Museum of the Azores. Back in the capital, three arches once marked where the city ended, the Portas da Cidade. They stood right by the old harbour pier. Workers later moved the whole structure inland for a new seaside avenue. Each arch is cut from black basalt, the same rock the island's volcanoes produced. The centre one still holds the royal coat of arms, a leftover badge from Portugal's crown. Locals call these gates the face of the city, printed on more postcards than any other landmark. Walk a few streets on, and the Mercado da Graça sells everything the island grows. It opened in 1848, built to gather scattered farmers into one hall. Vendors sell fruit found nowhere else in the country, custard apples and guava-like araçás grown in volcanic soil. Sweet golden pineapples pile up on every table, grown just outside the city under glass. Fresh tuna and octopus caught that morning sit beside farm cheese and homemade bread. Locals still shop here daily, the same way their grandparents did before tourists arrived. Behind that glass, the Azorean pineapple greenhouses do something done nowhere else. Pineapples grow under panes here, far from any tropical heat. Each plant takes nearly 2 years to make one fruit, far slower than anywhere else. Farmers burn leaves on purpose, smoking the plants to force every flower to bloom together. That trick lines up the harvest, so hundreds ripen at once instead of one by one. Workers paint the roofs white in summer, then let them clear in winter, controlling sunlight by hand. A single pineapple is not really one fruit, starting as roughly 200 tiny flowers fusing together. The slow process gives Azorean pineapples a sweetness growers claim beats the tropics. Islanders invented something else nobody copied, the viola da terra. This guitar came over with settlers back in the 1500s. It packs 12 strings into 5 courses, giving it a jingling sound no normal instrument makes. Its wooden body curves into two hearts, standing for two people kept apart by the sea. The thing even used to sit on newlyweds' beds, a wedding gift meant to bring joy to the marriage. Players still lead Holy Spirit festivals and folk dances with it, keeping songs alive that were never written down. "2,000 feet up, Miraduro do Castelo Branco takes in half the island at once. The lookout sits on a volcano's rim. An odd stone tower there was built by unknown hands, once used to watch over the fields below. From the top, one glance takes in a crater lake, a whole valley, and the ocean on both sides. That view exists because this island keeps growing, still built by the same volcanoes. Green fields below give São Miguel its nickname, fed by that volcanic soil. Off Terceira, two rocks in open water go by Ilhéu das Cabras. Both rise straight out of the sea, the biggest of their kind in the whole archipelago. One climbs 276 feet above the waves, the other nearly double that at 482 feet. Shepherds once grazed sheep and goats up there, which is exactly how they got their name. Landing is banned today, since the whole area sits inside a protected nature reserve. That protection gives rare seabirds a nesting ground free from any threat. One cave hides stingrays every summer, gliding past divers who swim right in by boat. Boats still bring visitors close for a look, but no one sets foot on shore, keeping this corner exactly as the sea shaped it. This is Azores Islands, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of the California, check out this video.